The morning sun rose over New Seoul Colony, casting long shadows across the dome that protected the human settlement on this distant planet. The colony was only 15 years old, but it already had the look and feel of a real city, with tall buildings and busy streets. People from Earth had come here to start new lives among the stars. Jung Kim stood at the window of his office, looking down at the busy street below. At 65 years old, his hair had turned completely white, but his back was still straight and his eyes were sharp. He owned the Blue Mountain Apartments, one of the first residential buildings in the colony. He had come here with the first wave of settlers, bringing his money and his old ways of thinking with him. "Mr. Kim," called his daughter Hannah from the doorway. "It's almost time for your meeting with Dr. Wells." June turned with a frown. "The man is late with his rent." Again. Hannah stepped into the office, holding a tablet. She was 35 years old and helped her father run the apartment building. Unlike her father, she had grown up seeing humans of all backgrounds working together to build this colony. "It was only 2 days late, father. And there was that problem with the banking system for off-world transfers. Everyone had delays." "Rules are rules," Jum said firmly. "I have been too soft on him already." Hannah wanted to say more, but knew it would do no good. Her father had been looking for reasons to complain about Dr. Marcus Wells since the day he moved in 6 months ago. She knew the real reason wasn't about the rent being late. A knock sounded at the door. Dr. Marcus Wells stood there, tall and dignified in his colony science uniform. The patch on his shoulder showed he worked in the terraforming division, the scientists who were slowly changing the planet's air and soil so humans could one day live outside the dome. "Good morning, Mr. Kim." "Miss Kim," Marcus said politely. "I apologize for being late with the rent. The transfer system." "Please sit down, Dr. Wells." June interrupted, not offering to shake hands. He returned to his desk and picked up a paper document, something rarely used in the colony where most things were digital. Marcus sat down, his expression calm though his eyes showed concern. "Dr. Wells, this is the second time your rent has been late in 6 months, June said. "The first time, I gave you a warning. This time, I must take action according to our agreement." "Mr. Kim, as I tried to explain, the colonial banking network had a system-wide failure. Everyone's transfers were delayed. If you check with other landlords—" "I am not other landlords," June cut in. "In my building, we follow the rules strictly. Otherwise, there would be chaos." Hannah watched her father, feeling a mix of shame and frustration. She knew many tenants had been late with payments because of the banking problem. Her father had told all of them not to worry about it, all except Dr. Wells. "Father," she said quietly, "maybe we cooled." June held up his hand to silence her. "I have made my decision." He slid the paper across the desk to Marcus. "This is an eviction notice. You have 7 days to leave the apartment." Marcus stared at the paper, his face showing shock before he controlled his expression. "Mr. Kim, is this really necessary? My work at the terraforming division is at a critical stage. Moving now would be very difficult." "Your work problems are not my concern," Jun said coldly. "Perhaps you should have thought about that before being careless with your rent payments." Marcus took a deep breath. "Mr. Kim, I understand rules are important to you, but this seems extreme for a 2-day delay caused by a colony-wide system failure." June's face hardened. "Are you questioning my decision in my own office?" "No, sir. I'm asking you to reconsider. I have made my decision. People like you always think rules don't apply." "People like me?" Marcus asked quietly. The room went silent. Hannah felt her chest tighten. June didn't back down. "People who think their important jobs make them special. Earth scientists who look down on those of us who built this colony with our hands." But everyone in the room knew what June really meant by people like you. Marcus was one of only a few black colonists in New Seoul, which had been settled primarily by Korean and other Asian families. Marcus stood up slowly, his dignity intact despite the insult. "I see. Thank you for being clear, Mr. Kim. I'll have my things out within 7 days." As he turned to leave, Hannah stepped forward. "Dr. Wells, wait. Father, this isn't right, and you know it." "Hannah, this is not your decision," Jun snapped. "No, but it reflects on our family," she replied firmly. She turned to Marcus. "Dr. Wells, I apologize for this situation. If you need more time." "Thank you, Miss Kim, but I'll manage," Marcus said with a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. After Marcus left, Hannah confronted her father. "Why did you do that? He's one of our best tenants. He's quiet, respectful, and everyone likes him." "I don't have to explain my business decisions to you," Jun said, turning back to his window. "This wasn't a business decision," Hannah said. "You've been looking for an excuse since he moved in. Is it because he's black, or because he's from Earth?" "Watch your tone," Jun warned. "I built this business from nothing when we came to this planet, long before you were old enough to understand such things. And I'm proud of what you built," Hannah said more gently. "But times have changed, Father. We need people like Dr. Wells. The colony needs his skills." Jun waved his hand dismissively. "There are many engineers. We can find a better tenant." "You already have someone in mind, don't you?" Hannah asked, suddenly understanding. "Mr. Sung from the Environmental Control Center asked about apartments last week. He's a good man from a respectable family. His parents came on the same ship we did." Hannah shook her head in disappointment. "I'm going to check on Dr. Wells." "Hannah." Jun began, but she was already walking out. Hannah found Marcus in the lobby of the building, talking on his communicator. "Yes, I understand. No, I don't think there's any changing his mind. It's fine. I'll figure something out." He ended the call and noticed Hannah approaching. "Dr. Wells, I wanted to apologize again," she said. "It's not your fault, Miss Kim. Still, it's wrong. My friend Tad runs the Starview Apartments on the east side of the colony. They have a vacancy. It's smaller than your current place, but it might work until you find something better." Marcus looked surprised at her help. "Thank you. That's very kind. It's the least I can do," Hannah said. "And please, call me Hannah." "Then you must call me Marcus." He smiled, a genuine one this time. "What were you working on before all this happened?" Hannah asked. "We're adjusting the atmospheric processors for the next phase of terraforming," Marcus explained. "It's delicate work. In about 2 years, we might be able to open parts of the dome for short periods." "That's amazing," Hannah said. "My son Minho would love to hear about it. He's 7 and wants to be a scientist." "Smart kid," Marcus said. "Maybe someday he'll." Marcus's communicator beeped again. He checked it, and his expression brightened. "Well, this is unexpected good news, at least. My son David is arriving tomorrow." "I didn't know you had a son," Hannah said. "He's in the Earth Defense Force, a lieutenant commander. I haven't seen him in 3 years." Marcus's pride was clear in his voice. "That's wonderful. Will he be staying long?" 2 weeks. He was supposed to surprise me, but his friend let it slip." Marcus sighed. "Now I'll have to tell him about this housing situation. I'm sure Todd can find space for both of you," Hannah assured him. Marcus nodded gratefully. "Thank you again, Hannah. Not everyone here shares your father's views." "More than you might think," Hannah said. "Things are changing, even if some people resist it." Later that evening, Hannah watched her father eating dinner alone, as he often did. She thought about Dr. Wells and wondered what kind of man his son was. She had never met anyone from the Earth Defense Force before. What she didn't know was how much things would change when Lieutenant Commander David Wells arrived at New Sol Colony, and how soon her father would regret his decision. The interstellar transport ship Earth Star slowed as it approached New Sol Colony. From the viewing window, Lieutenant Commander David Wells watched the dome city grow larger. The clear bubble protected the human settlement from the planet's harsh atmosphere. Inside the dome, buildings reached upward, and green parks dotted the landscape. David had not told his father exactly when he would arrive. He wanted it to be a surprise. After 3 years fighting in the Proxima Centauri conflict, he was looking forward to 2 weeks of peace with his dad. The ship docked with a gentle bump. David grabbed his military duffel bag and joined the line of passengers leaving the ship. He wore his Earth Defense Force uniform, dark blue with silver trim and the patches of his many missions on the sleeves. The other passengers gave him respectful looks. Everyone knew what the EDF had done to protect the colonies. "Welcome to New Sol Colony," said a young woman at the entry gate. "Purpose of visit?" "Visiting family," David said with a smile. "My father is Dr. Marcus Wells." The woman's expression changed slightly. "Dr. Wells, the terraforming engineer." "That's him," David said proudly. "Is something wrong?" No, she said quickly. "Just, you might want to contact him right away." David thanked her and stepped into the colony's main square. He breathed deeply. The air smelled different than on his military ship, fresher, with hints of plants and cooking food. People walked in all directions, busy with their lives. He called his father on his communicator. "Dad, guess where I am?" "David." His father's voice sounded surprised and happy. "Are you here already? I thought you were coming tomorrow." "I caught an earlier transport. Wanted to surprise you. I'm in the main square by the landing dock." "Stay there. I'll come get you." 20 minutes later, David saw his father walking quickly across the square. They hugged tightly, patting each other's backs. "Let me look at you," Marcus said, stepping back. "The uniform suits you, son. And you look exactly the same," David laughed. "Colony life must be good for you." A shadow crossed his father's face. "Actually, we need to talk about that. But first, are you hungry? There's a good noodle place nearby." Over steaming bowls of noodle soup, Marcus told David about the eviction. "He's kicking you out because you were 2 days late with rent, when there was a banking system failure." David's voice rose in anger. "Keep your voice down," Marcus said calmly. "It's not that simple. Mr. Kim has been looking for a reason since I moved in." "Because you're black," David said bluntly. Marcus sighed. "I've dealt with people like him before. The colony is still young. Some of the first settlers brought old prejudices with them." "That doesn't make it right," David said. He had faced discrimination in the military too, but had fought past it with his exceptional skills and determination. "No, it doesn't. But his daughter Hannah helped me find a new place. It's smaller, but it will do for now." David put down his spoon. "Dad, you're one of the best terraforming engineers on this planet. You're helping make this world livable for everyone, including that old man. You shouldn't have to move. Sometimes you have to pick your battles, son." David thought about the battles he had fought against the alien forces that wanted to push humans out of the Proxima Centauri system. The aliens thought humans were weak and didn't deserve to expand beyond Earth. David and his fellow soldiers had proven them wrong. "I'd like to meet this Mr. Kim," David said. "David, just to talk. I promise I'll be polite." Marcus knew that look in his son's eyes. "Maybe tomorrow. Tonight. Let's get you settled in. I've been staying at the Starview Apartments. My friend Ty found a unit for us." As they walked through the colony, David noticed a group of workers in bright orange jumpsuits surrounding a large machine in the center of a park. "What's going on there?" he asked. "That's one of the atmospheric regulators," Marcus explained. "There are 5 of them throughout the dome. They keep our air clean and at the right temperature. That one has been giving trouble lately." "Is it serious?" "Could be. We've had some unusual readings. I'm on the team looking into it, but it's not my main project." The next morning, David woke early. Military habits were hard to break. He left a note for his father and went out to explore the colony. Without planning to, he found himself walking toward Blue Mountain Apartments, where his father had lived until recently. The building was one of the tallest in the colony, with a shiny blue glass exterior. David stood across the street, looking up at it. His thoughts were interrupted by a woman's voice. "You must be David." He turned to see a Korean woman about 35 years old, holding the hand of a young boy. "I am," he said. "And you are?" "Hannah Kim. This is my son, Minho." She smiled. "You look just like your father." "You're the landlord's daughter," David realized. "The one who helped my dad." Hannah nodded. "I was just taking Minho to school. Would you like to walk with us?" As they walked, Minho looked up at David with wide eyes. "Are you really in the Earth Defense Force?" "Yes, I am," David said, smiling at the boy's excitement. "Did you fight aliens?" "Minho," Hannah scolded gently. "That's not polite to ask." "It's okay," David said. "Yes, I did. But mostly I fly transport ships, taking people and supplies where they need to go." "Cool," Minho said. "I want to be a scientist like Dr. Wells when I grow up." He showed me pictures of plants growing outside the dome. After dropping Minho at school, Hannah turned to David. "Your father is a good man. Many people here respect him. I'm sorry about what happened." "It wasn't your fault," David said. "But I'd like to talk to your father." Hannah looked worried. "My father is set in his ways. He grew up in a different time." "So did my father," David pointed out. "But he doesn't judge people by their skin color." Before Hannah could answer, her communicator beeped urgently. She checked it, and her face turned serious. "I have to go. There's a problem at the Central Atmospheric Regulator." "The one in the park?" "My father mentioned it was having issues." "Yes, and it's getting worse. They're calling in all engineers." "I'll come with you," David offered. "I've worked on life support systems on military ships. Maybe I can help." They hurried to the Central Park. A large crowd had gathered around the regulator. Warning lights flashed red on its control panel. Engineers in orange jumpsuits worked frantically on open panels. David spotted his father among them. Marcus looked up and was surprised to see David with Hannah. "David, what are you doing here?" "I ran into Ms. Kim. She said there was trouble." An older man pushed through the crowd. "Jum Kim." He stopped short when he saw Marcus, and then David in his military uniform. "Who authorized this EDF officer to be here?" Jum demanded. "I did," said a tall woman in an official colony uniform. "I'm Director Park, head of colony operations. Lieutenant Commander Wells has experience with life support systems. We need all the help we can get." "What's happening?" David asked his father. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead. "The main atmospheric processor is failing. If we can't fix it, we'll have to evacuate this section of the dome." "How bad is it?" "Bad. The secondary systems should have kicked in, but they're not responding either." Director Park addressed the engineers. "We have less than 48 hours before air quality drops to dangerous levels. I need solutions." As the engineers returned to work, Jun approached Hannah. "What is he doing here?" he asked, nodding toward Marcus. "Trying to save our home, father," Hannah replied coldly. "And who is this?" Jun asked, looking at David. "Lieutenant Commander David Wells," David said formally, standing straight. "Dr. Wells is my father." Jun's eyes widened slightly as he looked between David and Marcus. He hadn't expected Marcus to have a son in the Earth Defense Force. "Mr. Kim," David said, his voice level but firm, "I understand you've evicted my father from his apartment. May I ask why?" Before Jun could answer, alarms began blaring throughout the park. People looked around in fear. "Attention all colonists," the voice announced over the public address system. "We are experiencing atmospheric regulation failures in multiple sectors. Please return to your homes and prepare for possible evacuation. This is not a drill." The peaceful visit David had planned was about to become something very different. As people began to panic around them, he caught his father's eye. They both knew. The colony was in serious danger. Chaos filled the Central Park as people rushed to get home. Security officers in blue uniforms tried to keep order. David stayed calm, his military training kicking in. He had been in worse situations during the alien conflicts. "Dad, what exactly is happening with these regulators?" David asked. Marcus pointed to the large machine. The 5 atmospheric regulators clean and circulate air throughout the dome. If they fail, we lose oxygen and temperature control. We also lose the filters that remove harmful gases. Director Park called for everyone's attention. I need all non-essential personnel to leave the area. Engineers and emergency response teams only. As the crowd thinned out, David noticed Jum Kim had not left. He stood to the side, watching with a worried expression. Mr. Kim, you should go home, David said. This is my colony too, Jun replied stiffly. I helped build it 15 years ago. Father, Hannah said, I need to stay as part of the emergency team, but you should take Minho home from school. Before Jun could answer, another engineer ran up to Director Park. Ma'am, the school sector regulator just went offline. What? Hannah gasped. Minho is there. Director Park turned to her team. We need to evacuate the school immediately. How much time do we have? Air quality will reach dangerous levels in about 2 hours, the engineer replied. I'll go, David volunteered. I can help with the evacuation. I'm coming too, Hannah said, her voice shaking with worry. I'll keep working on the main regulator, Marcus said. David, be careful. As David and Hannah rushed toward the school, Jum called after them. I'm coming too. My grandson is there. The school was 20 minutes away on foot. When they arrived, teachers were already gathering children in the play yard. Many kids were crying, and some looked scared. Minho ran to his mother when he saw her. Mom, the alarms are really loud. Hannah hugged him tightly. It's okay, sweetheart. We're going to get everyone to safety. The school principal approached them. We have 312 children and 28 staff. The emergency shuttles only hold 200 people at a time. How long until the first shuttle arrives? David asked. 30 minutes, but we may not have that long. The air system is already showing decreased oxygen levels. David thought quickly. We need to move everyone to the inner rooms away from the outer walls. The air will stay better there longer. As they began moving the children, Jum surprised David by taking charge. Everyone follow your teachers. Older children, help the younger ones. Stay calm and walk, don't run. David looked at the old man with new respect. Whatever his faults, Jun knew how to take control in an emergency. Inside the school's gymnasium, David checked the wall panel showing air quality. The numbers were dropping faster than expected. We're losing oxygen too quickly, he told Hannah and Jun quietly, not wanting to scare the children. The shuttles won't get here in time. What can we do? Hannah asked, holding Minho's hand tightly. David thought about his military training. We need to create a sealed area with a separate air supply. The science lab, Minho said suddenly. Dr. Wells showed us the oxygen tanks there last month. He said they're for experiments. David looked at the boy in surprise. That might work. Where's the lab? Minho pointed down the hall. That way. It has a special door that closes tight. David and Jun followed Minho to the lab. Inside, they found what they needed. 10 large oxygen tanks used for science experiments. These won't help everyone for long, Jun said, examining the tanks. No, but they'll buy us time until the shuttles arrive, David replied. Help me move them to the gym. Together, they rolled the heavy tanks down the hall. In the gym, David quickly set them up, attaching tubes to release the oxygen slowly. Everyone needs to sit down and stay calm, he announced. Breathe normally. Help is coming. As the children settled on the floor, David's communicator buzzed. It was his father. David, what's your situation? We have about 300 children and staff. Air quality is dropping fast. We've set up oxygen tanks from the science lab, but they won't last long. Listen carefully, Marcus said. I think I can fix the school sector regulator remotely, but I need my specialized tools from my old apartment. The ones that were thrown out during the eviction, David asked. looking directly at June, who stood nearby listening. There was silence on the line. Then Marcus said, "Yes, my diagnostic kit and atmospheric calibrator. They were in a silver case." June stepped forward. "I know where they are." David put the call on speaker. "Dad, Mr. Kim is here. He says he knows where your tools are." "They're in the building storage room," June admitted. "I didn't throw them away." "Can you get them?" Marcus asked. "Blue Mountain Apartments is in the next sector. The connecting doors may be locked down for the emergency," David pointed out. "I have override codes," June said. "I'm on the Colony Emergency Council." David made a quick decision. "Mr. Kim, you stay here with the children. You know how to keep them calm. I'll go get the tools." "No," June said firmly. "You stay. The children trust you now. I'll go." David was surprised by June's offer. It could be dangerous. The air in the corridors. "This is my colony. My grandson is here." June looked at Minho, who was helping younger children stay seated. "And I'm the one who put those tools in storage." Hannah touched her father's arm. "Dad, I'll be fine," June said. "Just tell me what to look for, Dr. Wells." Marcus described the silver case and its contents. June nodded and headed for the door. "Mr. Kim," David called after him, "why did you keep my father's tools? You threw out everything else." June paused. "Because they looked important. I may be stubborn, but I'm not stupid." With that, he left. The next 45 minutes were tense. The oxygen in the gym was getting thin despite the tanks. Some children were starting to cough. David kept checking his communicator, but there was no word from June. Finally, the door burst open. June staggered in, his face red from exertion. He carried a silver case. "Got it," he gasped, handing the case to David. David quickly called his father. "Dad, we have the tools." "What now?" Marcus gave instructions while David opened the case. Inside were devices that looked like small tablets and wires. "Connect the main diagnostic tool to the wall panel," Marcus said over the communicator. "The access port is on the right side." David followed the instructions, attaching wires from the silver case to the gym's environmental control panel. "I'm in," Marcus said after a moment. "I can see the problem now. The main airflow controller is locked in emergency shutdown mode. I can bypass it using the secondary systems." Everyone in the gym waited anxiously. The younger children had become quiet, some breathing heavily in the thinning air. June sat on the floor, still catching his breath from his run. "There's more to your father than I thought," he said quietly to David. "He's been helping people his whole life," David replied. "That's who he is." Suddenly, the vents in the ceiling hummed to life. Fresh air began flowing into the room. The air quality display on the wall slowly climbed back to safe levels. Cheers erupted from the children and teachers. Hannah hugged Minho tightly, tears in her eyes. "Dr. Wells did it," the principal announced. "The air system is working again." David's communicator buzzed again. "We've stabilized the school sector," Marcus said, sounding tired but happy. "The children will be safe now." "What about the main regulator?" David asked. "Still working on it, but we've bought ourselves time. The evacuation shuttles can take their time now." David looked at June, who was watching the celebrating children with a strange expression on his face, part relief, part something else that looked like shame. "Dad," David said into the communicator, "there's someone here who might want to thank you." He held out the communicator to June. The old man hesitated, then took it. "Dr. Wells," June said, his voice still proud but with a new note of respect. "You saved our children today." "We all did, Mr. Kim," Marcus replied simply. "Even you." As evacuation shuttles arrived to take the children to safer areas of the colony, June stood apart from the crowd, deep in thought. The colony he had helped build was in danger, and the man he had evicted from his building was working to save it. The man's son had just helped save June's own grandson. His world was changing, whether he liked it or not. The colony emergency continued through the night. The main atmospheric regulator was still not working properly. Many people had been moved to safer areas, but engineers and essential workers remained to fix the problems. David sat in the colony's emergency control center, watching his father work. Marcus had not slept in 24 hours. He moved from one computer to another, checking readings and making adjustments. Other engineers listened to his instructions carefully. "You should rest, Dad," David said, offering him a cup of hot tea. Marcus took the cup gratefully. "Soon. We're close to a solution." Director Park entered the room, looking tired but determined. "Dr. Wells, we have approval for your plan to restart the main system." "Good. We'll need to shut down all 5 regulators at once, then restart them in sequence," Marcus explained. "It's risky, but it's our best chance." "How long will the colony be without air circulation?" David asked. 7 minutes, Marcus replied. "Everyone will need to remain calm and breathe normally. We've distributed emergency oxygen masks to critical areas." From across the room, Jung Kim watched the discussion. He had joined the emergency council meetings throughout the night. Now he approached Marcus and David. "Dr. Wells," he said formally, "the council has a concern. If this plan fails, we could lose the entire colony." "I understand the risk," Marcus said. "But if we do nothing, the system will continue to degrade. We'll lose the colony anyway, just more slowly." June nodded slowly. "The council trusts your judgment. We've approved the plan." As June walked away, David said quietly to his father, "He's different today, almost respectful." "Fear changes people," Marcus replied. "Sometimes for the better, sometimes not." An hour later, the colony-wide announcement system activated. Director Park's voice echoed through every sector. "Attention all colonists. In 30 minutes, we will perform an emergency reset of our atmospheric regulation system. This will cause a brief interruption in air circulation. Please remain where you are and follow all instructions from emergency personnel. This procedure is our best chance to restore full functionality to the system." In the Blue Mountain apartments, Hana had taken Minho home to rest. The boy had been exhausted after the school evacuation. Now he sat on the couch, looking out the window at the quiet streets. "Mom, will the colony be okay?" he asked. Hana sat beside him and put her arm around his shoulders. "Yes, Dr. Wells and the other engineers are very smart. They'll fix it." "Grandfather was brave yesterday," Minho said. "He ran to get the tools even though it was hard for him to breathe." Hana smiled. "Yes, he was brave. But why was he mean to Dr. Wells before? Dr. Wells is nice and smart." Hana sighed, trying to find the right words. "Sometimes older people have ideas that aren't right. They learned these ideas when they were young, and it's hard for them to change." "What ideas?" "Like thinking people are different because of how they look. Your grandfather grew up in a time and place where people thought like that." Minho considered this. "That's stupid." "Yes, it is," Hana agreed. "And I think grandfather is finally starting to see that." At the emergency control center, final preparations were underway for the system reset. Marcus gave last-minute instructions to his team. "Remember, we have to restart the regulators in exactly the right sequence. If we get it wrong, the imbalance could damage the whole system." June approached Marcus again. "Dr. Wells, I would like to help. I was part of the original team that installed these regulators 15 years ago." Marcus looked surprised, then nodded. "We could use another experienced hand. You can monitor the pressure readings on this station." As they worked side by side, Jum said quietly, "Your son is an impressive young man." "Thank you," Marcus replied, not looking up from his work. "I'm very proud of him. He told me he fights aliens who think humans are inferior," Jum continued. "He said it was strange to find the same attitude in a human colony." Marcus stopped working and looked at Jum directly. "What did you say to that?" "Nothing." Because he was right. June's face showed his inner struggle. I have been unfair to you." Before Marcus could respond, Director Park called out, "2 minutes to system shutdown. Everyone to your stations." The moment for personal conversation passed as both men focused on their tasks. The huge screens at the front of the room showed countdown timers and system status displays. Shutdown commencing in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Shutdown initiated. Throughout the colony, the constant background hum of machinery went silent. The air became still. In homes and emergency shelters, people held their breath, some literally. In the control center, Marcus watched the readings carefully. Power levels dropping. All systems offline. Standby mode engaged. Now came the critical part. They had to wait exactly 3 minutes for all systems to fully reset, then begin the restart sequence. 3 minutes on the clock, Director Park announced. Everyone remained calm and breathed normally. The room was silent except for the sound of breathing and the soft peep of the countdown timer. David watched his father's calm concentration and felt proud. This was the man who had raised him to never let others define his worth, to always stay dignified in the face of prejudice. Yet here he was, working to save everyone, including the man who had treated him unfairly. 1 minute remaining, Director Park announced. Suddenly, one of the screens flashed a warning. Marcus leaned forward, concerned. "Pressure building in Sector 3, he said. "The safety valves aren't responding." "That's my sector," Jim said, alarmed. "Blue Mountain Apartments." "If the pressure gets too high, it could damage the structure," Marcus explained quickly. "We need to manually override the safety valve." "Can we do that from here?" David asked. Marcus shook his head. "No, someone has to go to the maintenance room in the building's basement." Without hesitation, Jim stood up. "I'll go. It's my building." "You won't make it in time," Marcus said. "And you don't know the override sequence." "Then come with me," Jun said. "We can take my emergency vehicle." Marcus looked at the countdown timer. 30 seconds until restart, if we're not back in time. "Dad, go," David said firmly. "I can handle the restart sequence. You showed me how." Marcus hesitated, then nodded. "Director Park, my son will lead the restart. I need to go with Mr. Kim." "Understood, Dr. Wells," she replied. "Be careful, both of you." Marcus and Jun rushed out of the control center. Jum's emergency vehicle was waiting outside, a small electric cart with flashing lights. They jumped in and sped through the empty streets. "Why are you helping me?" Jun asked as he drove. "After how I treated you." "Because that's what humans do," Marcus replied simply. "We help each other, regardless of differences. That's how we survive out here among the stars." They reached Blue Mountain Apartments and raced to the basement. The maintenance room was hot and loud with the sound of pressure building in the pipes. "There." Marcus pointed to a red valve wheel. "We need to turn that counterclockwise, then enter the override code on that panel." Together, they strained to turn the heavy wheel. Slowly, it began to move. Marcus quickly entered the code on the nearby panel. The dangerous hissing sound began to fade. "We did it," Jum said, relief in his voice. Marcus checked his communicator. "The restart sequence should be underway. Let's get back to the control center." When they returned, they found the control room filled with smiles and congratulations. David saw them enter and waved them over. "It worked," he called out. "The system is back online and stabilizing." Director Park addressed the room. "Excellent work, everyone. Air quality is returning to normal levels throughout the colony. The crisis is over." As the emergency workers celebrated, Jom turned to Marcus and David. "Dr. Wells, Lieutenant Commander, I owe you both an apology. My prejudice nearly cost this colony dearly. If you hadn't been here." "But we were here," Marcus said. "That's what matters." "I would like you to return to your apartment in Blue Mountain," Jun said formally. "I was wrong to evict you." Marcus looked at his son, then back to Jun. "Thank you for the offer, but I think it's time for a fresh start." For all of us. Later that evening, the Wells men sat in their temporary apartment, finally resting after the crisis. "You were amazing today, Dad," David said. "The whole colony is talking about how you saved them." "We all did our part," Marcus replied modestly. "Even Mr. Kim." "Do you think he's really changed?" "People can change when they see the truth clearly enough," Marcus said. "Sometimes it takes a crisis to open their eyes." There was a knock at the door. David opened it to find June, Hannah, and Minho standing there. "We brought dinner," Hannah said, holding up bags of food. "A thank you celebration." As they shared the meal together, Minho asked David endless questions about space and the Earth Defense Force. Hannah and Marcus discussed the colony's future. And June, though quieter than the others, listened and watched, a man seeing his world through new eyes. The colony lights dimmed, simulating evening, and outside the dome, the alien stars shone brightly. Here inside, humans from different backgrounds sat together, not as separate groups, but as one community looking toward a shared future among those distant stars.